We've just got some procedural business before we get further into the meeting. So I'll ask members of the committee if there's any declarations of substitutes, and looking around potentially there are. Have any members any interest that wish to declare in relation to the magistrate or general legislation? And we also need to consider exclusion of press and public. We have no part 2 items today, so press and public will not be excluded. Thank you. Okay. I'd just like to welcome everyone to this special meeting of the Environment, Transport and Sustainability Committee, which will be considering the report on the 20-mile-an-hour limit Phase 2 consultation. I've called this special meeting with the agreement of the lead opposition committee members, Councillor Theobald and Councillor Mitchell, to allow an extended period of public and member consideration of this particularly important matter. And I'm grateful to members of the committee and officers for making the time in their busy diaries to be able to be here today, and I'll also extend that welcome to members of the public who gather in good numbers. There have been a number of documents received relating to the 20-mile-an-hour Phase 2 proposals. And while many have been emailed to members at different stages, and they've all been deposited in the members' room, for clarity, I have asked officers to circulate hard copies to members as a bundle, which I trust you all received from the Deputy Head of the Law in the Courier on Monday. But for the record, I'm going to ask Deputy Head of Law to read out what those documents are. That will be more for the interest of members of the public and for our public record. Just like to do this now.
Yes, thank you. So this is just a copy of those documents, as Councillor West said, that were sent out on Monday, background documentation that's already in the members' rooms. So there's copies of written consultation responses received from the GMB, Woodland Drive Action Committee, a local resident dated the 4th of October, 26th of September and 11th of September and 21st of March. There was a response from Brighton and Hove with Streamline Limited dated the 4th of October, a local resident dated the 16th of October, local resident the 27th of October, Friends of the Earth, 2nd of October, Brighton and Hove Bus and Coach Company, 2nd of October, Bus Users UK, 2nd of October, Southern Taxis, Brighton Streamline, Brighton and Hove Radio Cabs, 3rd of October. So a copy of a petition unnamed, 3rd of October. There was a list of consultation responses to question 3 of the consultation documents, that's listed street by street. Letter from Bicycles, dated the 4th of October, an email clarification in relation to page 27 of the report relating to the removal of duplicate submissions, a copy of the petition dated the 3rd of October regarding Friar Road and Woodbourne Avenue, and a solicitor's letter dated the 6th of December, and an officer response of the 9th of December.
Thank you. At my request also, the Deputy Head of Law also circulated by email yesterday an additional item relating to the proposals for patching the Hollingbury area. Hard copies of those have been distributed in the meeting as well. So I think that is it an email format? Yes. This one. So that's in addition to the bundle that you received. I'm very sorry to say that for personal reasons, Emma Sheridan, who was due to present the report on 20-mile-an-hour today, is unable to be with us. Martin Heath, the Road Safety Manager, will be introducing the report along with Dave Parker, the Head of Transport Planning. The consultation on initial proposals for Phase 2 of 20-mile-an-hour has received a very high response from the public, with close to 58,000 surveys circulated and nearly 15,000 responses received. 28 staff exhibitions were held in 18 different locations, which, along with special stakeholder meetings, additional correspondence and a number of petitions, have altogether made this perhaps the largest transport consultation the Council has ever conducted. I would like to thank residents, businesses and other stakeholders, as well as members of the committee and other members of the Council for their input, And I am sure that members of the committee will also wish to join me in thanking Emma Sheridan and other officers involved for all the hard work that they've put into this project so far. I'm sure that as we hear from public and members and consider the proposals in the report, we will be particularly mindful of the aims of the Council's 20-mile-an-hour programme as set out in section 1.2 of the report, and that at the heart of those aims is our shared desire to improve safety for all road users, particularly young, old and other vulnerable people in the city. And I'll just finally say that I do note very strongly that the revised proposals before us offer the majority in every area the speed that they wish to see in their road. I think that's an important point for us all to hold in focus as we discuss this. Okay, that's the end of my chair's communications. The next item on the agenda is public involvement, and we have a written question from Amanda Brace. If you'd like to come forward, Amanda, and ask your question.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. My question, as residents and users of Freshfield Road, we've noticed a higher traffic volume and speed since it became the boundary for phase 1 20-mile-an-hour area. And when we saw phase 2, we were very concerned that Freshfield Road wasn't recommended as a 20-mile-an-hour road. That's why 78% of residents supported the 20-mile-an-hour zone for our road. And it's one of the highest levels of response in the city. I think that's in the report. Freshfield Road is almost totally residential, has hundreds of households, and is not a main road, so there's no reason for it to be 30 miles an hour. And it's on the way to school for pupils not just from St Luke's School, where my son attends, but also for other primary schools, Queen's Park, Royal Spa Nursery, and other schools and nurseries in the local area. So we'd ask you all to support 20 mile an hour for Freshfield Road, and we also work for 20 miles an hour across the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda, for your question. I have a response here. Traffic speeds monitoring on Freshfield Road has shown that in line with the number of boundary roads to the phase 1 area, traffic speeds on Freshfield Road have in fact reduced slightly by 0.9 miles an hour since the implementation of 20-mile-an-hour limits in the central Brighton and Hove phase 1 area. It is understandable, however, that as traffic speeds have slowed on nearby streets within the phase 1 area, with the introduction of those limits, that residents in this area that you describe would be more aware of higher speeds on roads like Freshfield Road by comparison. I note that in the response to the consultation on phase 2 of 20-mile-an-hour, responses were received from 57% of properties, with 78% expressing support in Freshfield Road to become 20 mile an hour. And that is obviously an extremely strong expression of desire from residents in that road. The proposals for the second phase of 20 mile an hour programme will be debated and considered at this meeting, and include, in recognition of the strength of those views expressed by residents, a recommendation for the speed limit on Freshfield Road to be reduced to 20 miles an hour. And this has been supported by a number of stakeholders, including Brighton and Hove. So I think that's hopefully a very good response to the concerns and the question. And I'd just like to say very well done, because I understand you've raised a very strong petition as well. Would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Thank you. Well, I'd just like to say we really welcome the recommendation report, and parents and residents are really pleased to know that that was in there. But just to ask if we could know what the process and the timing would be for looking at the measures mentioned in 4.62 and how the community and the schools will be involved, making sure that any measures implemented in Freshfield Road to make 20 miles an hour self-enforcing, how those will be made appropriate, supported by the community and make them effective, because we'd really like to help you do that.
Thank you, Amanda. The timing of the process is that there will be following today, there will be a further consultation for the speed reduction orders. So that's an opportunity for further consultation engagement with residents. But your specific point about any measures to additionally support the speed reduction, I'll certainly get back to you in writing about how officers envisage that being done. Thank you. Thank you. Right. Our next item of public engagement is a deputation by Mr. Chris Hawtree. I understand that Mr. Hawtree may not be with us today to present the deputation. I have got a response if members wish to hear that. You have seen the deputation in the papers. Would you like to hear the response, or are you happy for me to just send that in writing to Mr. Hawtree?
I think I'd like to.
You would like to. Well, further to what the deputation actually says, I'd like to thank Mr. Hawtree and the other people raising the deputation for doing so. Just to say that we've made it very clear all along the key arterial routes into the city, such as Old Surrenden Road, which runs alongside Hove Park, should remain at 30 miles an hour. In terms of Hove Park Road, Goldstone Crescent, Orchard Road and the westernmost section of Drove-Way, the basic reason for the area cited not being included was a clear absence of support from local residents in that area. Not just the road cited, but of the whole of the area for a lower speed limit. And that was very clear. I think of all the areas that actually receive the lowest level of support, 20 miles an hour in that area. There's also no significant identified collisions and casualty problems in the area to justify it. Whilst the consultation is not, as the deputation points out, a referendum, the FT guidance is clear that 20 mile an hour limits should be considered in consultation with local communities. We're obviously looking for that community to support the measures. So as with other areas, on those streets proposed to reduce to 20 mile an hour speed limits, and those proposed to remain at 30, officers will continue to monitor casualty and collision data together with traffic volumes and speeds alongside local community opinion as part of ongoing monitoring and evaluations of speed limits across the city in the future. Thank you. Okay, so we now turn to only report on Brighton and Hove 20 mile an hour limit phase 2, results of the consultation, and also consideration of recommendations by officers for the next steps. What I'll do first of all is explain the process. We have 4 amendments. We have a member of the council wishes to address us. Obviously we'll have our own questions and comments. So I just wanted to just explain the running order of this process for members and for members of the public. So first of all, I will invite Councillor Dunn to address the committee. Then we will turn to the amendments, and I'll ask the proposers of the amendments of Conservative Group Amendment 1, then Conservative Group Amendment 2, then Labour Group Amendment 1, and then Labour Group Amendment 2 to table their amendments. I will then ask officers for their comments on each of the amendments so that we actually get a clear opportunity to hear their views on those. And then I will ask the members for any clarifying questions they have about the amendments and the report as a whole. And then I'll invite comments from members on amendments and substantive, and we will get into that debate. So a little bit of amendments and then substantive to the vote. So I hope that's clear. That's quite a list of them. So first of all, I'll ask Councillor Dunn if you'd like to. You've requested to come and speak to the committee. Would you like to come and address us?
But wouldn't you ask the officer to present the report first?
You would like to.
That would be normal procedure, I would submit.
I beg your pardon, you're absolutely right. That was my intention as well. I'll ask the officers to present the report.
results of recent public consultation on proposals for phase 2 of the citywide 20-mile-an-hour speed limit programme.
Martin, can you speak?
Secondly, to present the revised proposals for phase 2 now informed by the findings of that consultation and indicated in a plan shown in Appendix 1 of the report. And thirdly, to seek approval to progress to the next stage of consultation embodied in the advertisement of formal speed limit orders under the Road Traffic Regulation Act. In May 2010, following an investigation into 20-mile-an-hour speed limits and zones by the Environment and Community Safety Overview and Scrutiny Committee, the panel produced a report containing 15 recommendations. In broad terms, the main recommendation arising from that investigation was the wider implementation of 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in residential roads and on roads outside schools, routes to schools, roads outside parks and playgrounds, sports and leisure facilities, outside community buildings, older people's care homes and local shops, and on roads in busy shopping areas. The core aims of the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit programme in Brighton and Hove, therefore, are to reduce both perceived and actual risk of the occurrence and severity of road collisions and casualties, to help create pleasant, people-centred streets and public spaces, to encourage and enable more active and sustainable travel, and to encourage and enable independent mobility for children, older and other vulnerable people in the city. An outline proposal for the phased introduction of 20-mile-an-hour speed limit restrictions across the city was considered at the Environment, Transport and Sustainability Cabinet member meeting in May 2012, where the principles of the proposed implementation programme were agreed. Permission was granted to undertake citywide stakeholder and public consultation, preparatory research, surveys and street character assessments. Public consultation on the phase 2 proposals took place between the 13th of August and the 4th of October this year, with a full analysis of results now shown in Appendix 2 of the committee report pack. Public consultation has therefore been widespread, well publicised and extensively reported by local media and social media, as well as by direct mail and email, and consequently open to all. In terms of the results, a majority, 53%, of people living within the phase 2 area responded that they support the introduction of a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit across their area, and 51% of respondents across the phase 2 area support the limit on their own individual street. The results of consultation suggest a majority of respondents in most neighbourhoods support the introduction of 20-mile-an-hour limits on the street where they live. However, there are some streets where a majority of respondents do not support 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. Analysis of the survey responses reveals specific objections to the inclusion or exclusion of a particular road. For example, residents did not support a specific road being proposed to reduce to 20, or they did not support a specific road being proposed to retain its existing speed limit. Or they expressed an objection to the whole scheme under a wide range of themes which are further explored in the committee report. Recommendations before the committee are that the committee notes the results of a public consultation on proposals to implement a citywide 20-mile-an-hour scheme, and that the committee authorises officers to proceed with advertising the formal speed limit orders for the changes in speed limits as described in the revised phase 2 20-mile-an-hour speed limit proposals outlined in this report.
Turn off. Thank you. Dave, have you got anything you want to add at this stage?
Obviously,
We've got I haven't got a mastermind here, so
I normally say we have to take questions at this point.
right, well, thank you, Martin, for the presentation. Now, I'm going to take points of clarification after we've done the amendments. But first of all, we're going to hear from Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Chairman, for affording me the courtesy of being able to speak. Thank you very much. May I say from the onset, I support 99% of what is within the report, and I'm actually relieved that the vote has been as it has been, because I had always believed that a 20 mile per hour limit is, I think, should be acceptable on those roads. I was heartened to hear the officer report that the amended proposals have come forward now informed, i.e. consultation, and I think that is very good. My real intention, Chairman, is in respect of page 9 of your papers, paragraph 4.47, and reference 4.48 Portland Road. There was a specific question asked within the consultation, do you support Portland Road? The question was, would you go down from 30 to 20? The report says, was the road specifically requested by stakeholders, most notably the bus company, to remain at 30 miles per hour. Now, I think that does an injustice, because the bus company may or may not have made representations, and I'm not here to represent the bus company. But to say, in addition, it is noted that the results of the public consultation show the majority in favour of retaining the existing limit on this road, including amongst those who live on the road. That is almost belittling the residents' response. The residents who live on Portland Road voted against the road becoming 20 miles per hour. That is fact. And I would ask through you, Chairman, to actually ask the officers to confirm that that is the case. That's a first question.
Figures before us on.
Yeah, but I'm asking for confirmation in public that what I'm saying is correct. My second point is that the majority of people living in the area, but not living on Portland Road, voted against the introduction of a 20 mile per hour limit. And again, I ask the officers to confirm that is correct. I also ask the officers to confirm that the figures on page 42 of your report, Chairman, where it gives the figures for and against, both for residents living within the area and residents elsewhere, but not living within the area, voted against the proposal. And again, I would ask for officers to confirm that that information is correct. So there are three questions I would ask initially, if I may, Chair.
Well, okay. I can see that straight away we can get into confusion about numbers here. It may be helpful if officers are prepared to give us some clarity on those questions, but I can assure you we do have the figures in front of us already.
Thank you, Chair. We can confirm that residents along Portland Road did vote against that street becoming 20 miles an hour. I'll take just a few seconds just to clarify the other streets.
I think part of the question was not only what were the views of the residents living on Portland Road, but the views of the residents within the area about the suggestion of Portland Road being made 20. Because it offers an option, as I understand, so that was something for the whole area to respond to.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few seconds, there's quite a bit of data to shift through here.
Yes, we can always come back to this point. It won't be forgotten. And we will be debating amendments specifically about Portland Road, so I think there will be an opportunity for members to pick that up. But officers are looking for the information at the moment. They can always comment on that later. Have you got any further points that you want to make, Gary? Maybe we'll have the answer by then.
I'm most grateful, Chairman. Of course, as I said, the answer is on page 42. I did try to conclude to the report. It does state it quite categorically. 64.5% voted against the increase or decrease from 30 to 20. Chairman, I do appreciate that the officers have quite rightly highlighted accident records within Portland Road, and indeed I know they have accident records throughout the area. I do not question that. What I am saying is that local residents appreciate and know local conditions, and they have voted overwhelmingly against Portland Road becoming 20 miles per hour. And I would pose the question, Chair, to you with the greatest respect, and that is, what is the point of having a public consultation if in fact you are happy to ignore when it's a 2/3 majority? It was overwhelming. Chair, I can't speak in relationship to the amendments because of course they have not been moved yet, but I do have considerable sympathy with one of the amendments, which is really saying if the officers delayed on Portland Road until such time as they've got further information, that might be a way forward. But I'm grateful for you having voted in the courtesy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Obviously, all members of the committee have heard your point of view, and they will now take on board those points when they're considering the amendments and substantive vote. Dave, you've got an update.
Sorry, just to be clear, that the officer's recommendation to include Portland Road was due to the number of accidents along that road. It does contain the highest number of accidents in the Phase 2 scheme.
Yes, and that point is clear in the report as well about the number of accidents and also the number of accidents in comparison to the rest of the Phase 2 area. It actually has the highest number of accidents of the whole of Phase 2 consultation. Thank you. Okay, well, I will invite Conservative group members. Councillor Theobald, your proposal would be the first amendment. Would you like to propose that?
Thank you very much, Chair. We seem to be a long way away from the microphone. I hope people can hear us. Yes, I'm going to move the Conservative group amendment, which is on the very road that Councillor Dunn has been talking about, and officers have been responding. I think I said when Phase 1 was introduced that we wouldn't have done it this way, and indeed I didn't support Phase 1. And one of the main reasons for that was my concern for bus routes and taxi routes and such like, because we do have, I know Councillor Dunn said he's not here to speak for the bus company, but I do think all of us have to consider the numbers of people who use buses and indeed use taxis. And we need those bus services to run frequently and on time. We've also seen, as far as Portland Road is concerned, the very large majority, again, that Councillor Dunn alluded to, of people who actually live on the road. And we note the officer's reference to accidents on this very long road, and hence we phrased the recommendation that I'm moving now in the way we have done. And it's quite clear, I don't need to read it out, it's here exactly what we're saying. So I would hope that the committee would agree with our amendment, which is raised. Do I need to read it out? Yes. Okay. I'll read our amendment out, which is to amend recommendation 2.2 and add further recommendation 2.3 as shown in bold italics. 2.1, that the committee notes the results of the public consultation on proposals to implement a citywide 20-mile-an-hour scheme. That the committee authorises officers to proceed with advertising the formal...
Just briefly amended that.
Oh, well, yes, but the last bit is amended. Because it says subject to recommendation 2.3 below. Alright, okay. Well, 2.3 then
Well,
says...
everyone's outside of the main method.
Well, if they have, why am I reading it? That in view of A, the concerns expressed by Brighton and Hove Bus Company and the taxi trade, and B, the lack of support from residents for a 20-mile-an-hour limit, that a decision on including Portland Road in the proposed scheme be deferred to enable further monitoring and analysis of road safety and accident data, and that a report on the results of that work be brought back to a future meeting of this committee. Thank you.
And Councillor Janio, you're going to second. Do you wish to speak now or speak later?
Just like to formally second it.
Thank you. I have a question about this, but I'll hold that for later. I think I have the second Conservative amendment table now as well, please. Well, I'm going to ask officers to respond to all of them together.
Well, the second amendment is a long way away and completely different to the first one. I would have thought you'd have dealt with the first amendment, and then we move on to the second one.
I explained the process, that we're going to hear them all tabled first, and then we will hear officer explanations to response to each of them in turn, and then we'll start asking questions and debating and so on. So can you do the second one, which is also your proposal?
Point of order, Chair. The amendments are somewhat different in their nature. I'd like to put a proposal that we discuss each individual amendment as they are different in nature. So can we please I'll make a proposal to this meeting that we take each individual amendment as they arise.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't hear any objections when I first read out the running order. Yes, you have. Yes, and I'll ask members if they support your request. Can I hear from them?
What clarification?
We've got a problem with the microphone situation, which is not helping you with
Yes, if we do as Councillor Janio has proposed, does that mean each of us around these tables then gets an opportunity to speak opinions and so forth about each amendment as we go, rather than addressing all the amendments in one marathon speech?
That's why I wanted to get them all tabled at once, because I don't think we want to get into a debate, I'm sure, individually. This is why I don't really want to do it like this. I would rather have them all tabled, then we have officer responses to all of them, and then we can ask questions and debate them together.
Take a vote.
I've called for a vote. Who would like them to be tabled one at a time, and I will allow officers to respond to them one at a time, and I would then say we're going to have to debate them one at a time. Who would support that? Go ahead.
Chair, I'm just trying to get some clarity here. So if I read you right, what you are proposing is that each of the amendments are read out, as you said, as you put it, are tabled, and then that's the end of that. And then what would be your next step after all of the amendments have been read out?
As I said at the beginning of the meeting, and then we objected, we will hear each amendment tabled, and then I will ask the officers to give their response to each of those, and then I will invite members to ask questions of clarification on that advice, and then we can open to comments from members of the committee on the amendments and the amended and the substantive altogether. So you'll be able to, and I'll give you as much time, because I realise there's many different subjects you may wish to hit on. So what I am now offering members, in follow-up of Councillor Janio's order, is if we don't want to do it like that, I'll ask you to vote on this. If you want to hear each amendment tabled in turn, so we take the first one as tabled, we hear from the officers, and then we ask our questions and debate that amendment, and then we do the whole thing again for the second amendment. But that's the process I'm now suggesting that you may wish to support in response to Councillor Janio. Is that clear?
So either way we go, there'll still be the opportunity to ask officers questions before we move into debate, as we know these things often merge. Thanks. Yes, thanks.
Yes, either way, I don't think it will make any difference. I thought the members might, as they do, strain to other developers, debate the whole thing together. So, are members in support of the proposal I've just read out, which responds to Councillor Janio? Do this one at a time.
One at a time.
Can I see any more hands in support of that? No. Okay. Those against doing it that way? Anyone else against doing it that way? No.
Let's let it remain confusing to everybody.
Well, I'm just... Everyone started this confused. So, how many were in favour? Three. Three abstentions. Well, I'm going to vote against that and go back to what I said in the Right, thank you. So, where are we? We've had the First Amendment proposed. I'll ask the proposer of the Second Amendment, Councillor Theobald, again, if you would propose your amendment.
This is going to take a few minutes because I wish to explain my amendment. And that's why I thought we're doing this completely the wrong way.
Can I just... I'll just reassure you, Jeff. I don't think you need to worry about how long you need to speak at this stage, because I will give you another opportunity to speak later on. I'm not going to hold you off because you already had a go. All right?
Okay, I'm moving the second Conservative amendment, which relates to Area 5. A completely different area to the one which we moved our last amendment. Now, I voted against the first scheme, phase 1, largely because I was dissatisfied with the large first phase area, a blanket scheme, and the effect on some of the bus routes involved. I was concerned about the number 7 bus, for instance, which would largely be travelling at 20 miles an hour through the day and night, taxis from hotels at night time. And now, without waiting to evaluate the first phase, which I think is what we should be doing, and maybe making some changes to phase 1, we're now rushing into phase 2. And I have to ask, why is this happening? Is it because the Green Party wish to do this before they leave office? No, I'm sorry, you've asked me and I'm making my speech to move this amendment. So, and I'm entitled to, I told you that I didn't think it was the right way.
It's the process.
Right, so you're going to have to listen to this now. Friends of the Earth, Bus Watch, the bus and taxi companies are rightly concerned on the effect on our buses and taxis of these proposals. And I've already mentioned the number 7 bus, but I'm also concerned about buses through Hollingbury, which must run on a tight margin. I can remember not so long ago actually having to defend a bus service which was under threat of being taken off. So I am concerned about the margin and the length of time bus journeys could be extended, and which could make the difference between having a bus service and not having a bus service. I think the residents of Patcham and Hollingbury actually realise this. And the part of my ward of Patcham that is in Dyke Road East will stay at 30 miles an hour. Now we have the remaining part of my ward, which is in Area 5. And on page 31 of the report, all respondents in the area have voted 63.5% to 36.5% against 20 miles an hour in the area, and they voted 51.1% to 44.9% against 20 miles an hour for the roads they live in. And as an example, for a road like Braybon Avenue, those living in the area 5 voted 76% to 24% against that being moved to 20 miles an hour. Now, Labour have put in an amendment calling for Braybon Avenue and Surrenden Road to stay at 30 miles an hour. And Friends of the Earth, the bus companies, and as Braybon Avenue. Both of those roads narrowly voted for 20 miles an hour. And yet alongside those roads like Cookme Away and Rothfield Crescent voted for 30 miles an hour. Now what I did, because obviously being an elected representative for the area, I would have preferred residents to have said very largely one way or the other what they wanted. And but that has not happened in this area. I did meet with officers, and despite your late email which you sent out in response to our amendment, the information I have in an email from officers that in the area that I'm suggesting in my amendment that should be deferred, namely the area between Carlton Avenue, Surrenden Road and Carlton Avenue, Surrenden Road and Ditchling Road, in actual fact the majority to keep this at 30 miles an hour was 2 households. It was 4 for I added Graham Avenue and Old Farm Road. So no matter what Councillor West has had put out by officers on his email, what I have been writing from officers is that there is a majority in this area against changing this from 30 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour. You know, this is obviously something which is not ideal for elected councillors when they're in a situation such as this. But I believe that if you're going to have such wholesale change as this, there has to be a mandate for it. And quite clearly there isn't a mandate for a change. Indeed, the majority is against, albeit a small one. And that hence the reason why I'm suggesting that this area is deferred. There may be a time in the future, for instance, if Ditchling Road is changed to a lower speed with the gateway aspect to the National Park, that may well be a time in the future when this could be, or if there was a very strong feeling in this area that there should be a change to 20 miles an hour, then I would be the first to support that, if there was. But there isn't. What I do think is important, and again it does say that in this report, where there is reference to traffic infrastructure works in Winfield Avenue, which it is proposed to stay at 30, and Carlton Avenue, which it is proposed to stay at 30, where I advocate very strongly pedestrian crossing in the beginning of Winfield Avenue. That is what my visitors I know would want, and in Carlton Avenue. I'd like to see one in Braybon Avenue, and although it's outside this area, it says in the report that there will be a pedestrian crossing going in Surrenden Road. That I think is extremely important, and I would solidly support that. So that is the reason why I'm moving the amendment in the way I have, and I would very much hope that the members of this committee would agree with this. Thank you.
Can we have the mover of the Labour first? Oh, sorry. Thank you. Jill.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm reading the first of the Labour and Property Group amendments, which is that the section of Surrenden Road and Braybon Avenue linking Preston Road with Carden Avenue remain at the current speed. And this is because our main concern all along has been to balance the calming and the safety in residential areas while preserving the public transport corridors to allow buses and taxis to operate efficiently. And we have had detailed discussions with both the bus company and with representatives of the taxi trade. Those have been positive discussions, and both organisations have come up with some very helpful suggestions. Residents do want their streets to be safer, but they want their buses and their taxis to run on time. It's not an easy balance to achieve, but we do recognise that Surrenden Road and Braybon Avenue are a key north-south route. and we are wanting to maintain those routes for buses and taxis. One of the other considerations that we made around this amendment is the fact that the bus company and taxi companies are concerned that particularly in the evening, late evening and at night, they are able to get people out of the city centre who want to get out to the outskirts of the city, and then to return those vehicles back into the city centre to pick up more passengers. And we believe that that is actually a key aspect of making the city safer at night. And so that is why, Chair, we are proposing that those two roads remain at current levels.
Thank you, Joe. Councillor Robbins, you're in a second.
It's 40 second.
Thank you. Okay, that leaves us the second Labour amendment which we received today. Jill will also propose.
Thank you, Chair. So the second Labour and Cooperative amendment is that the following roads are excluded from the 20-mile-an-hour scheme and remain at current speed limits by reason of them both being, again, key bus and taxi routes, this time east-west, and the majority of residents in both roads having voted against these roads being included within the 20-mile-an-hour scheme. Both of these roads also link roads that are proposed to remain at 30 miles an hour. So the first road is Preston Road, from the junction with Preston Road and Ditchling Road at the Five Ways, and the second road, Stanford Avenue, from the junction with Preston Road and Ditchling Road at the Five Ways. Both roads are wide roads, and both of those roads the residents have a majority against, and both of those roads are needed by buses and taxis to get people around safely and easily. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robbins, again, you're to second.
Yes, we're going forward.
Thank you. Okay, now I will invite officers to Councillor Davey.
I wonder whether before that, with regard to Conservative Amendment 2, I just want to be clear exactly what Councillor Theobald was asking for. So you're seeking an indefinite deferment of that area, because in the amendment it talks about further public consultation, because of the timescale on that, and I understand, and I kind of gather from what you're saying, you're just asking for that to be deferred indefinitely, so effectively to be taken out, that whole area to be taken out. So if you could just clarify that.
Yeah. I'm asking for it to be deferred until such time as there is a call for this to, if there is a genuine call for this whole area to go into a 20-mile-an-hour system. It's up to some stage, officers in the future want to poll everybody again, and let's hope we get a clearer majority, then that's fine by me, but I'm not putting a time limit on it. And maybe, no, I'm not going to put a time limit on it.
That's clear, thank you.
It does say in your amendment that to defer to enable further consultation to take place. So that does somehow suggest not just sending it off into some distant future with no timescale. We do need to know what your proposal is here, because we do have a further, assuming that the report goes through today amended in some fashion, we do have the consultation for the speed reduction orders, which will bring us back to March probably. So it could be possible the consultation could happen between now and then to clarify residents. Is that what you're looking at, or you're just saying?
No, I'm not, because I fear you could get the same result again, a genuine 50-50. So I think that the timescale will need to be a little bit longer than that. People to see the situation in other areas, and there may then be a call. So I'm not suggesting in the next few months, because we've done a poll and it's come out as a 50-50, but it's up to the committee at some stage in the future to decide whether they wish to do it or not.
Liz, you give us some legal advice.
Thank you. Yeah, just in order to be clear, because the way that the amendments are currently written, officers would take that as an instruction to carry out further consultation, and that's not what you're saying. So if you would like to amend it so that it just says to be deferred, or says to be deferred until, and then just want to take out the words after deferred.
Yeah, if that helps.
It does help, because I think otherwise you might get a report back in March
No.
suggesting a consultation timetable. So just for clarification then, the amendment's stopping, full stop after deferred at 2.3.
Thank you.
Okay, so as I have that, the amendment now is a full stop after the word deferred and the rest is deleted. Okay, right. Thank you for that. So I'll now ask officers for their contributions on the four amendments. I think there's also actually a question that needs to be raised about the timing and the intention of the first Conservative amendment as well, Brighton Road. I think it's a similar matter actually. Maybe we need to just get clarity on that first. It's lost in a sea of paper.
On that road, that we wait no longer than 12 months to revisit that section.
Sorry, Dave, can you say that again?
Given the action made on Brighton Road, we would recommend that comes back to committee within 12 months for review.
Okay, so that would probably then align with when the SROs come back for a decision. Right, okay. So we're clear that this then becomes a matter for someone in the future. It takes it out of phase 2, basically.
Correct, yeah.
And do you have any comments on any other amendments?
In relation to the second Conservative amendment, we do agree it is finely balanced, but we believe that it does give the best of a balanced situation. We could go back and consult, but there is a risk that we get the same answer for some more money and some more resources, which are quite limited. So it's entirely possible we could reconsult, but the risk is that we'll get the same answer.
Okay, if members any questions or clarification for officers at the moment regarding amendments or madam? Oh, sorry, you're going to... Dave, if you want to respond to the other amendments as well, I thought we'd done that.
I'm going to ask Martin Heath to respond to the Labour amendments.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Just dealing with the first of the Labour Cooperative Group amendments, the section of Surrenden Road and Braybon Avenu linking Preston Road with Carlin Avenue to remain at the current speed. Councillor Mitchell raised the point that this is actually a corridor route. It's almost one road but with two names carrying the same traffic. And we agreed with that. Although on the two sections, if you ask the residents on the section within which they live, they respond particularly to that particular section. But in coming to the conclusion, if you look at the response rates for the two sections, you see there's a higher response rate for one section of road than the other. And if you combine those and treat the route as a corridor, which fits with the original criteria set out in that Environment, Community Safety, Overview and Scrutiny Committee criteria, that these kinds of limits should be applied to roads where you have residential areas, roads outside schools, routes to school and so on. It does fit with that much better. And actually the overall response rate is in favour of 20 mile an hour rather than against it. Just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. And are you going to... You've got the second Labour amendment. You want to speak on that?
On the second Labour Cooperative Group amendment regarding Preston Ditchley Road and Fiveways, and Stanford Avenue from the junction of Preston Road and Ditchley Road and Fiveways. These routes are both local distributed roads, densely residential, serving large residential areas on both sides with high car ownership. Whilst their function for public transport services is recognised, they also have major barriers to movement for residents on foot. Although 67 households opposed the 20 limit in these streets, 62 supported it. And the council has in recent years invested quite a large amount of money in improving pedestrian facilities on these roads as part of the Safer Routes to Schools programme. And demand for further improvements to pedestrian crossing facilities continues. There will be an opportunity for residents to object to the next stage of consultation for the traffic regulation. I think that's worth bearing in mind.
Okay, thank you. Dave, do you have any more you want to add at this stage? Or okay, there might be points that members have they wish to clarify. So Chris, I saw your hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. Can you feel my microphone on? Yes, thank you, Martin and David, for bringing us up to speed. Down to speed. Just a couple of points I'd like to raise is Councillor Mitchell mentions Preston Drove as being a bus route. Could you tell us which buses go along Preston Drove? Also, I'd like to bear in mind Councillor Theobald's taking out a swathe of Patcham. I'd just like to hear a little bit more about your thinking. It's not just the roads that schools are on, but the roads that children go to, walk along. They don't just magically appear outside the school. Perhaps their parents wish they did. But I'd like to hear a little bit more about the routes, especially in a family area such as Patcham, where they go to school and so forth. And just like to point out, perhaps in tribute to Councillor Dunn, I'm surprised he hasn't done so already. I'd just like to point out on page 12, 4 lines up, the first word, discrete section of road, that should be D-I-S-C-R-E-T-E. Indeed, if we could create a discrete road, I think everyone would welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you for your point of clarification. There was actually 2 questions there. The officers might be able to respond to those.
Preston Road bus, ghost bus, and
Preston Road buses. We've got an idea on what buses use Preston Road, and also routes to school through the Hollingbury area.
Yeah, the 5B bus passes along a section of Preston Road between Beaconsfield Villas and Preston Park Avenue. So there's a section as you can see. We ask Councillor to repeat the question for the safer routes.
yes, I was just wanting to highlight your thinking behind, particularly in relation to those roads all around Wilmington and all that area of Patcham. We know about schools on the main roads, but I also would like to hear just a little bit about how you think roads that aren't by the school, they lead to it, and they're much used, as they are in other areas, by parents taking children to school, and yet the Conservative amendment for that area proposes those roads traversed by children and their parents being removed, and how you regard all that section of pavement linking up with the roads, the main roads that schools are.
I'll try and help you out here a little bit. There is a school within the area described in the amendment, Carlton Primary, and there is obviously there's a number of children attending Patcham High School, Patcham Juniors, Patcham Infants, as well as there may be some accessing the campus and farming campus and that on-table schools. Clearly, there are children travelling within the area to access schools and other things. If that may answer your question. Graham, you have a question.
Yes, can I ask, thank
granted response to this. Question 4. Paragraph 4.54, page 10 of the report. There's a sentence there that says it is noted that infrastructure works to improve pedestrian crossings are already planned for Surrenden Road and should be implemented prior to the implementation of the lower limit. I just want to confirm 100% that's going to happen, whether there is a change to the limit on Surrenden Road or not.
Thank you, Councillor Chair. Yes, that is correct. We're currently reviewing pedestrian crossing opportunities and facilities within the whole section of Surrenden Road, alongside some other measures to improve the route for cyclists, coming to the committee in January.
So what exactly is being proposed? Crossing on something from cyclists. Can you say what we're not at that stage yet? What the actual measures are?
Yeah, we're still in the process of analysing the information that we've got to draw up measures. There may be some options for the committee to choose from.
Happy with that one?
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little bit confused, but that's not really unusual. But it seemed to me that you were saying if you take Surrenden Road and Braybon Road separately, Braybon Avenue separately, that they were against a 20-mile limit, but if you took them together, they were for it. No, you probably didn't, but I'd just like to clarify what actually was meant.
I've got the figures here actually, and I think I saw an email from officers. There was a lot to do yesterday in preparing for this meeting. And the figures that are correct from within our papers are Braybon Avenue, the support for 20 mile an hour in Braybon Avenue by the residents of that street was 55.6%. And in Surrenden Road, the section subject to the amendment, i.e. the bus route, and there is an element of potential confusion because there's a section of Surrenden Road that falls within Jeffrey's consultation area, but Gill's on that bus route, the people along there, 57.1% of people along that section, bus route section, are in favour of 20 miles an hour. 57. Does that answer your question?
Well,
Should we come back to it?
no.
Yeah. Have we any other questions? Ian's been busy with the coffee machine. Have you got any questions or clarifications? Okay. All right, then I will invite members to you've had your questions, haven't you, really? The questions arise, but if you want to make comments on the amendments and the whole report, we'll show now. We're entering the debate. So, who would like to speak? Well, it's not easy, is it? Come on. It's just been suggested to me that it may help if you speak on each amendment. I was trying to work so I can say you're not keen, I mean, come on. We've started, so we'll carry on. So, in no particular order, speak to what you like about the amendments and substantive. Yes, I'll think, Chris.
Yes, thank you very much. This is obviously something we've been thinking about a great deal. And I came here this morning. I had thought to go to a neighbour's funeral, died at 44, ex-neighbour. But I felt, regret not being there, but I felt it was important to be here for this. And indeed, as I was walking here, I 1911, the day of the count, Jason and Anya Kitcat were late getting here, and they were visibly shaken up. They lived at that point on Hangleton Road, where Declan Herbert, a teenager, I don't want to comment particularly on the circumstances, was knocked over and about a week later died. Then I'm not talking about the circumstances. The fact is that had the car on Hangleton Road been going slower, but it was entitled to go at the speed it was going, but had it been going slower, he might still be here. So this just brought home to me very much what's involved. What we're being offered this morning, you don't often get such a chance, is we're being offered a chance here to prevent death. It's true. Those still are.
It's a terrible thing to say.
No, this is true. This is what it amounts to. It's a matter of life or death. I think it's perfectly fair to say that. And it's not simply being knocked over on the road. The point of all this is to encourage a healthier lifestyle, because as the Local Government Information Unit pointed out, in 2008, as well as 115 cyclists being killed on the roads and 2,500 road users in general, in that year, close on 33,000 people died from heart disease. All this is not simply about driving and walking, it's about the consequences of this. I think this is a very important point to bear in mind, that we're not just focusing on these issues. We've got these things don't exist in isolation. They've got ramifications which make all the difference between unmoving limbs and carrying on enjoying what is really a short span of human life. And indeed, we're hearing from some quarters as though this is sort of some madcap scheme that's sprung from Councillor Davey's brain, magnificent as it is. But in fact, this is happening in 30 places so far across the country. It's not mad, it's done to a purpose, it's not just done on a whim. And indeed, if we can put a monetary value upon human life, and it's just it's well-known fact that if somebody is killed road, that loses the economy, all the factors you take in, £1.7 million. I could do with it now. And accidents across the country each year, in various ways, cost 18 billion. The simple fact is, with a reduction of 1 mile per hour in the speed limit, that brings a 6% drop in accidents. As I've said, the community becomes fitter by these areas becoming more welcoming. If you've got motor cars pelting along a road, you avoid it, you go elsewhere. You get these bleak urban areas. Then there's also, I think it's well worth pointing out that there's something about driving a motor car. Each person thinks they're in a motor car and everybody else is the traffic, whereas that each motor car is part of the traffic. You've sometimes heard people say I was late taking my child to asthma clinic because there was a lot of traffic around when I was driving there. This is some general thoughts on the matter. I think it's to be welcomed. I think it's understandable in a way. There's something in human nature where we've seen it in administration in so many ways. Any change, people getting uproar about, like the mini roundabout on Bolston Villas. There was all sorts of allegations made, and then this little mini roundabout was put in, and people liked it, and it works well. I think we're also seeing the same at Seven Dials. Rather geekishly for me, I stood up there and watched the traffic for 10 minutes flowing round. So all these things then fit together. Just some more general, particular observations. If we had 30 miles an hour on Shirley Drive, I'd be very happy. It's an extraordinary speed people pelt along down there. If we could find a way of making it 30 miles an hour, it's good. As I've already mentioned about Patcham, I know it well. I cycled there for a month, almost every night, for Caroline Lucas's campaign, and I became very aware of the changing demography there. There's a lot of families there. People have moved out because they can afford it, they get gardens, and as Councillor Wester's highlighted, I think we've got to bear in mind all the roads in Patcham. I think that's very important. I'm rather surprised by Councillor Theobald's amendment taking out a swathe of Patcham, areas where families live and walk to schools. Talking about Surrenden Road, I know that well as well. Cycling to Patcham, I alternated between the A23 and the bigger hill of Surrenden Road, but it's a more pleasant road to cycle on balance. And indeed, I'm grateful to Martin for reminding me of the bus turning from Preston Drove, briefly coming out of Beaconsfield Villa down Preston Road and into Surrenden. It's a particularly nightmarish junction. Indeed, I was almost knocked over there because cars speed round coming up Preston Road to be ahead of the bus. The bus only occupies at that point a very small part of the road, and it wouldn't be doing 30 at that point, or if it did, it would be a kamikaze bus. So I think it's absolutely vital to keep Preston Road down to 20 miles an hour. And coming to Portland Road, which I know well, as does Councillor Dunn, it's a road with many shops on, particularly at the eastern end, but I also commend the shops at the western end. There's some interesting ones along there. And it's got a lot of junctions on it. It's very busy. You've got motor cars coming up from Church Road, so by the time you get to all the roads that lead into Portland Road, you've got more cars coming into that road than you do on New Church Road. So I can understand, up to a point, the New Church Road decision, but I think come Portland Road, you've got a lot more motor cars joining it, and the reason that there's a lot of cars queuing on Westbourne Gardens, Westbourne Street and so forth is the traffic coming along Portland Road is doing 30 miles an hour, so it's very difficult for motor cars to join that road. If the motor cars were going on Portland Road at 20 miles an hour, that would give that more leeway for drivers to join it, rather than, as often happens now, think, oh, I'll make a bolt for it because there's a lot of traffic backing up behind me. So there's a lot of schools along there, nurseries as well. There's a booming nurseries all over the place. And indeed, we're talking about the buses a lot, but in fact, as Councillor Davey will probably confirm, the bus company has recently said since the introduction of 20 miles an hour, the rate of their buses in the Phase 1 area has improved. So, and also with regard to all this sort of keeping Portland Road at 20 miles an hour, this is going to require additional signage, more complications. This seems a profligate attitude towards money by the Tories. So I'll end there. Thank you. Yeah, you said we're about ethics.
Well, that was good timing for me as well. We have another indication. Gill.
Well, this is the general debate, Chair, so as you explained. So, Chair, just to start with, in terms of the overall final area proposed for Phase 2, we are broadly in agreement with it. I don't think it really contains any surprises. The further out the scheme was proposed to go, I think people were, in some areas, less inclined to support it. We do support the Conservative amendments. Councillor Theobald wishes to defer a decision on that particular area, then we would agree with that. We would also support their amendment to look at Portland Road, and as part of gathering the accident data, road safety data for Portland Road, could we also please consider what physical measures could be put in place, additional physical measures could be put in place, particularly around the school. I know that is something that both of the ward councillors have been actively lobbying for. And so as part of that piece of office work, if we could ask for that to be done, that would be very good. Chair, as I've said before, when we were looking at sort of keeping the key bus and taxi routes running, we also looked at the east-west route of Edward Street and the narrow Eastern Road. Both the bus company and taxi companies were very, very keen that both of those roads remained at existing limits. But of course, most of Edward Street is already within Phase 1 of the scheme, and is also undergoing major bus corridor works at the moment. Eastern Road is residential in nature. It carries a lot of pedestrian activity associated with Brighton College, and the hospital, of course, which is now expanding to occupy other buildings along the road, including the old St Mary's Hall buildings. So we're content for both of those roads to fall within the scheme. However, Chair, could I make a plea to officers, please, to ask that the two pedestrian crossings, one outside Brighton College and one at the Brock Street junction are seriously considered to become pelican crossings, because both of these existing crossings, both of them between tall buildings and rather hidden in nature, regularly see accidents and near misses. So if officers could consider pelican crossings for those two, I'd be very pleased. And similarly, Chair, while we agree that Whitehawk Road should see its limits reduced to 20 miles an hour, we do believe that to achieve genuine speed reduction there, road safety improvements on that road are needed. Physical measures will be needed. Even something as simple as extending double yellow lines at junctions to improve visibility will really help. And I would also generally ask the administration to look at the implementation of physical measures where necessary to support this scheme and help it become genuinely self-enforcing by design. Thank you.
I'm sure that members will make a number of requests as we speak. Obviously there won't be any commitments from officers about whether or not something is a good idea, and they are taking note of all these points, and I'm sure that they will in time be able to consider all of that as we move forward. But obviously we can't be seeking specific commitments like that with the papers that we have before us today. I've got Councillor Janio next.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just a quick response to perhaps to Councillor Hawtree in his wonderful little Pride and Prejudice world of people strolling down towpaths and waiting for characters. There's no cars and no planes, no electricity, some agrarian society where average age of people died at 54. I'm afraid that the most socially progressive item that was introduced into the 20th century was in fact the motor car that enabled people to move out of their locations and seek employment. We now have ambulances that can reach people within fractions of the time taken for hearts to stop. We have, for him to rant and rave, can't he be honest first of all and tell me whether he'd like to ban cars and stop taking planes from the city, because I'd like to know, the residents of this city would like to know in the next election whether that's what he really means, because that's the sort of impression he's giving. The disgraceful speech that he made, alluding to us, if we take any roads out of the scheme here to killing children and losing limbs, is disgraceful and should not be part of any council speech ever in any chamber in this city. That was a disgrace. When we finish this meeting, I would like to ask him to apologise in public for making such statements. That's actually a disgrace. So that's the first thing.
Never wrong.
The first thing is
to the matter before us.
Well, I'm responding to the debate. I'm responding to the debate. So that's what I picture. So just let me say that. So we now move on to the 20 mile an hour scheme. And the funny thing is that this is actually part of Conservative government policy that we expand in 20 mile an hour scheme. So Conservative-led coalition, I shouldn't really say, but the Conservatives are fully behind introducing 20 mile an hour schemes where they're warranted. There's no debate about that at all. It's good for cycling, it's good for pedestrians, it's actually good for car drivers. Cars are safer. The one thing is that the government does support these measures being brought in where there's evidence backs it up. We do need evidence. We can't just go back to Councillor Hawtree's marvellous world where everything just gets introduced because we feel it's the right thing to do. We tend to live in an evidence-based society, and this committee here should be dealing with evidence, and I think that's correct. I don't think anybody would disagree with the evidence, and certainly from the first phase of the schemes that have been introduced, I think generally they're working pretty well. I must admit, in the central area where the streets are very dense, very low speeds anyway, it's working pretty well. I did actually do an experiment, if I may share with you, an experiment, dropped somebody at the station one night going on Avenu Road in Cromwell, and I thought, okay, 11 o'clock at night, I'm going to travel at 20 miles an hour. And rapidly behind me, I do apologise to taxi drivers, a taxi approached, and I thought, here we go, the taxi's going to overtake me and cause an accident. And to his credit, he stuck behind me, he stayed, he didn't do anything daft, it was very good. He eventually turned left, and then a member of the public came up behind me and went completely mad because he overtook me and nearly caused an accident. One of the things I'm worried about is the slight unintended consequences as we move into the suburbs. As we get into slightly quicker roads, we just have to be very careful with the way we plan these roads, because we don't want to have unintended consequences, and that is one of the things I'm very keen on. So I'm in favour of these schemes. It tends to work fairly well in the centre. Let's just be careful as we plan in quicker roads and wider roads. It's just one of the things I'd like to ask for. The other thing is we asked to go on the evidence, and I believe the evidence worldwide is that these 20-mile-an-hour schemes do tend to work in some circumstances, and there's a lot of body of evidence that suggests they do. But I'm afraid that we've only had the first scheme in this city for 6 months. There is no evidence brought to this committee that is scientifically proven, that can actually say that there are lower accidents, there's less pollution, that the taxi and bus companies have altered their routes successfully. There is 6 months of evidence, but if anybody gives me any reason to suspect that 6 months is enough, I would have liked at least 2 years evidence to see that it was working, that the new schemes have been put in place before we start launching this across the rest of the city. And another thing, as we launch this across the city, officers are going to be overworked trying to introduce all these in a safe manner, so I do worry about that in some ways. Also, there's no groundswell for this. If you look at the evidence, there's a lot of people in this room, I know they're backers of this scheme, but if you take the city as a whole, there is no massive groundswell. And we are responsible here for ensuring that this chaos doesn't ensue. If there is chaos, then I'm just asking, I'm not suggesting that we roll back, but if officers could just look at the rollout and do it in a sensible way, that doesn't just put a blanket in for all the 21 hours that we do, roll it out over a nice long period of time to get used to drivers getting used to it. That's all I'm suggesting. I'm not against the schemes, but just try and introduce it in a sensible way. So generally, I'm supportive of this. Certainly the roads in Hampton, we've been trying to get the small roads in Hampton moving 20 miles an hour for many, many years now. We're consulting with residents, and we're very pleased about that. And so as we move on, let's consult with everybody and get the real result. So to sum up, let's not go to some ideal world where we're going to ban cars, because we're not going to ban cars. We need to make the roads safer. We need to make the roads safer for everybody, cyclists, pedestrians, cars. The government does support this, and we generally support this, but I'm afraid that no evidence has been brought to this committee to suggest why we should roll these schemes out this quickly. We should have allowed 1 or 2 years for the schemes to settle down, and then we should have been brought back to this committee for a decision. It's just being rushed too quickly.
Thank you, Tony, for your contribution. As you say, within the report it does actually mention the outcomes of the first 6 months of phase 1, 20 mile an hour, which have shown, if I've got my numbers right off the top of my head, 74% of the roads in phase 1 area have actually seen a reduction in speed, with an average speed reduction of 0.9 miles per hour. And in some cases, roads have seen up to a 9 mile an hour reduction in speed, those being presumably the roads, well, as we would expect, the roads where the speeds were highest in the first place, because for a lot of the roads there's less to gain because they're already quite slow. The thing is, that is evidence enough of the success of that, because this is then measured against what the DFT and so many other cities in the country already know. There is plenty of evidence of the connection between reducing those speeds and then the consequences for how that reduces collisions and how that reduces the consequences. And we have seen in that first 6 months, I believe, a 20% reduction in collisions and a 20% reduction in casualties. Yes, it's not 3 years data, but this is not a novel thing to be doing. 12 million people in this country who live up to 20 miles an hour, out of a population of 70. So there's plenty of evidence that what is happening is correct, and there's no need to be slowing down this process. So I'm glad you were in favour of 20 mile an hour, and it's, and I hope you'll be supporting moving forward with this second phase later on today.
No, point of information. Yeah, I think I don't disagree with a lot of what you're saying, but in terms of scientific evidence, you say that the initial data suggests that. Well, if you introduce any new scheme, people's reaction to it is that they take time to adjust to these new schemes. And sorry to get a bit scientific, but there's a theory of regression to the mean. And the mean is what we should be looking at. The mean value of accidents and deaths cannot be assessed in a 6-month period over what was quite a warm summer. We need to get more data, which is not every other city in the country. It's not every country in the world. We are basing our evidence on what happens in this city, not what happens in some other part of the world. And we do not have that evidence before us today.
You made your point, thank you, Tony. Ollie, you wish to do that?
Thank you very much, Chair. Some of my points have been covered by the preceding discussion about there's been lots of talk about evidence and phase 1 and phase 2 data gathering. If Councillor Janio had broadened his horizons and broadened his reading a little bit, he might have read a 2009 report about 7 years of 20 miles an hour in London boroughs. Based on modelling, based on real data, breaking down into fatal collisions, serious injuries, slightly injured, all the rest of it. And what that report found, which has been referred to in the papers that we have today, is that in 20-mile-an-hour zones, and considering the background trend in reduction in casualties, there was a 42% reduction in casualties, focusing most on the seriously injured and killed, and most on young people, actually. So I think you can't just ignore wider evidence from elsewhere in this country, not very far away, and just sort of think about Brighton and Hove. This is very important. We have the evidence to go forward with this. And as others have alluded to, there are a large number of 20-mile-an-hour zones around the country, and lots of them are actually blanket 20-mile-an-hour zones, possibly one or two arterials. Islington, I used to live around in North London, and roads like Essex Road and Hornsey Road are 20 miles an hour. They're big roads. The eco-Marxist Republic of the City of London has a 20-mile-an-hour zone. In the past, in this committee, opposition parties over there have pushed us to show political courage and take decisions that oppose consultation results. For example, the level. For example, the communal bin project in Hanover. And part of what we're doing is exactly that. So looking at Portland Road, the local result was against 20 miles an hour, but taking into consideration the accident statistics, we're proposing that 20 mile an hour be brought forward for Portland Road. But the majority of what we're proposing is a very nuanced response to consultation results that gives most people exactly what they want in terms of the speed limit for their area. And so all I want to say really is that Brighton is not exempt from the laws of physics. We've got to take this forward. The evidence is there elsewhere in the country and elsewhere in the road. And remember that 42%. If you apply that to Portland Road, we've got the numbers in the report over the past 3 years, 50 casualties. Apply that 42% to Portland Road, you're saving 20 casualties over that period of time. Those are real figures. We need to take people.
Thank you, Ollie. Howard.
Well, I'd just like to say that we've tried all we can to look at compromises, and we've spoken to the taxi people, we've spoken to the bus people, and they're very reasonable people. They're not, and for Christopher Stanley to say that we've regarded this as a madcap scheme, we've never once said it was a madcap scheme. To completely demonise the motor car just polarises the argument. We all stand one end of the road to the other and shout and boo and hiss at each other, and it's ridiculous. What we've got to look to is to come up with sensible compromise, which I think is what we've tried to do, and not make these great speeches about how everything's wrong in the world because people are driving, they can't breathe, they're dying of heart attacks because they're getting in their cars. A lot of people need to. I need to use my car. I couldn't earn a living without using my car. Sorry?
Music's loud.
Well, I'm not saying, I've never once said that we should be driving. I mean, this is something that you've got. We've never said we were against it. We've never once said that we don't believe that. We've never said leave the whole area at 30 miles an hour or make it faster or anything. We've gone along with the scheme, but looked and tried to find compromise. And to sit here and be told that almost every ill in the world is down to the motor car, it's just not right.
Thank you, Ollie. Graham.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly support 20 miles an hour speed limits in urban areas, on residential roads and city centres and so on. I think the road safety argument for 20 miles an hour is a very compelling one. there is a consensus that there's a strong case for doing this in a sensible, reasonable way. And I do think it's a shame that the debate has become so toxic, and I can't really work out why that is the case. Perhaps it's a proxy issue for sort of the feeling that lots of people have that they're being lectured by this current administration in the areas, and you don't really feel the current administration is doing a particularly good job, voting to chop down trees and then studying protests against those trees being chopped down. One half of them introducing reforms to bin rounds, and the other half standing outside protesting against it. And I think it's a feeling that we've not got a very competent administration has sadly allowed this particular issue to become a proxy for protesting against the way the council is being run. So I've consciously tried to move beyond that, and perhaps had some difficulties as a result with some of those that are against 20 miles an hour. Looking at the stats, we probably have the, if not the safest roads in the world, pretty nearly the safest roads in the world, and the number of deaths for car drivers and car passengers has come down and down and down over the years. But sadly, that's not been the case for pedestrians and cyclists. The use of the road by pedestrians and cyclists has not got safer in the way that it has for cars. The reason it's got safer for cars is because of drink drive laws, and I remember when they were vehemently opposed by certain lobbyists, and seatbelt wearing, compulsory seatbelt wearing again. We had very, very strong arguments against that before it was introduced. The suggestion that if you wear a seatbelt, you're less careful when you're driving, more reckless. And now there's a consensus. I don't think anyone would want to reverse those sort of safety measures. And cars themselves have actually got a lot safer with airbags and the way they're built and that sort of thing, which has all made things safer for the car driver and the car passenger. But the same thing hasn't occurred in the same way for pedestrians and cyclists. And I think 20 miles an hour is a way of addressing that, and it does make things safer for other road users. And bear in mind, nearly all of us, most of the time, are, during every week, motorists, cyclists, maybe not cyclists, but certainly motorists, bus users, and pedestrians. We've got to stake in all of these things. It's very sad when it ends up as a sort of motorists v pedestrians v cyclists type debate. So I think the primary argument for 20 miles an hour schemes is one of safety for pedestrians, cyclists, especially vulnerable groups amongst those. I don't really buy the pollution argument. I don't think 20 miles an hour makes a difference one way or the other to pollution. We've got to sort of dirty diesel engines on the buses to make a difference there. And there's some good things that hopefully can happen that will do that. I don't buy the pollution argument, and I'm glad that's been quietly dropped. But I do buy it makes the area just nicer. If vehicle speeds are a bit slower, it is just nicer to be there, and that's a good thing, I think. Now, in terms of the consultation, I think it's sad we've ended up with a situation where this consultation is, and it's been referred to a number of times today, as people voting in favour or voting against. It's a consultation, it's not a referendum. And it's for councillors to actually decide that's what we're elected for, and if you don't like what we decide, you boot us out. That's the way democracy works, and we haven't adopted the Swiss system of referendums, and personally I don't think we should. But then looking at the consultation, I think actually there's been some reasonable decisions made in terms of what areas should be involved and what areas shouldn't be involved. And my colleague, Councillor Theobald, he's consulted closely with his fellow councillors who are elected for Patcham, and his judgment is because the feedback from the consultation there is basically against, albeit by a very close margin. as their representatives, he feels at this time it shouldn't go ahead, and I respect him, and Councillor Theobald will seek re-election on the basis of the decisions he's made, and that's the way our system works. I think that's excellent. So that's the reason why. In terms of Portland Road, obviously part of that is in the ward I represent, and I thought about that very hard. I absolute respect for the advice the officers are giving. I think it's totally consistent for them to say quite openly, and there is actually an overwhelming majority of residents who responded to the consultation within Portland Road against changing the speed limit in Portland Road. I do think it's entirely okay for officers, it's about their professional duty to say that in our opinion as professional transport officers responsible for road safety, actually the road safety case for reducing the speed in Portland Road is a very sound one, and that's why we suggest you go ahead. And they've acknowledged that there isn't support from residents to do that, and it therefore falls to us as councillors to make a decision in those circumstances. So again, that's what you elect us for. So, in terms of the actual accident data in Brighton Road, what I'm not totally convinced of is whether just changing the speed limit from 30 to 20 miles an hour will actually make a difference to that accident data. Because was of course self-evidently every crash is speed related, because if the vehicle wasn't moving you wouldn't crash. It does appear that a lot of those crashes are not at the westbourne end of the road where the road is actually busier and more complicated. They're at the other end. They may well possibly a significant number be related to the design of the junction near the railway crossing, which lots of people have got concerns about, and not necessarily excess speed related. And that's why, if it was a 50-50 situation with residents, I'd be saying, well, we ought to reduce the speed limit now. I'd just like to see some more evidence of the crash stats, particularly trying to relate to whether speed is a factor, and especially speed above 20 miles an hour being a factor in that road, having the crash data it has, before going ahead against the residents' wishes. And that's why the amendment for Portland Road is significantly different from the other amendments. So we are asking for it to come back and be actively considered. So I think that's probably gone on for enough there, but we'll be speaking on in favour of 20 miles an hour, and it was of course some conservative administration here in the city that scrutiny recommending this was done. So thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Ian.
Thank you very much. Well, it is disappointing that this has become such a political football and something else with which to beat this Green administration, and because it really doesn't need to be like that. 20 mile per hour has gone in across cities all over the country, perfectly easily without all this conflict. And it's not about modal conflict. It certainly shouldn't be about cars versus people on bicycles versus people walking. It's about people, and what we actually need to do is start to focus our transport policy in this city on people rather than moving bits of metal around the city, which I hope very much is what we're going to be able to do when we do LTP for next year, and I hope everybody will support that kind of shift in emphasis. But we've heard often in this committee over these last few months that safety is important, road safety is important. We are reminded of it time and time again as members lobby and call for particular measures in their wards. And we know it is the #1 concern for residents across the city. Road safety on the streets where they live is the #1 concern. The traffic surveys tell us time and time again. And we hear that road safety is exemplary or good in this country, or maybe in this country compared to other places in the world it might be. But in this city compared to other places in this country, it is appalling. We have one of the worst road road safety records of any urban area in this country. We're in the bottom 10%. We've got we inherited a position with around 1,000 casualties a year. That is 3 a day. That should be intolerable to a city of this size. And we should do everything we possibly can to change that and improve that. And yeah, the early days it is early days, but the initial monitoring of the phase 1 show that it is working. We do have speed reductions of average over 1 mile per hour across that area. Some roads, one road I'm particularly interested in is Upper Lewis Road. 5 mile per hour speed reduction on Upper Lewis Road. That is really, really, really significant. And that is one of the kind of the most hostile roads in the city to walk on or to cycle on. We've got casualty reductions, 20% casualty reductions in 6 months. That is phenomenal. And the bus company feedback that is, because we did hear all the concerns about the impact on their buses a year ago, and a month after it got in, a couple of months after it got in, they said the reliability had increased and they just had the best reliability figures they've ever had. And there's been no problems at all for the night bus. So, it is, yes, and just to kind of go to some of the particular amendments. Portland Road, I know exceedingly well, I live just off it, I go there every day. It's a very, very busy street. Lots is going on. It's a very busy shopping street and a thriving shopping street. It's got the biggest primary school in the city. It's got nurseries. It's got a lot of older people living down there. And we've heard about the requirement for evidence. Well, the evidence is there before us. How much more evidence do you need before you actually agree to do something about it? And it's one of those areas where the interest goes way beyond the people who live on it. I think there must be nearly 1,000 children at that school, so I think they should have a say as well. Patcham. So, I'll cover the Patcham and the Surrenden and Braybon ones together. So, on Surrenden and Braybon, the residents were in favour. The residents in that area have been campaigning for years and years and years for safety improvements on that street. And we've probably got about 5,000 children attending that campus there. Dorothy Stringer, Barndean, Balfour Junior. So yeah, it is a very, very busy area. The whole area is really busy because people go and go. Those schools are attraction for the whole area, so that we need to be looking at road safety in the whole area. And that is exactly what the Scrutiny Committee said 3 years ago, and I'll just read what it says here. Wide implementation of 20 mile per hour speed limits in residential areas and on the roads outside schools, routes to schools, roads outside parks and playgrounds, sports and leisure facilities, community buildings, older people's care homes, local shops, and roads on busy shopping areas. So it does appear to me, I'm afraid, we are in danger of ignoring that advice. The Preston Road and Stanford Avenue ones that suddenly appeared this morning, don't know where they came from, but they don't seem to be bus routes to me. We've got the number 56, which goes up Stanford Avenue once an hour, and there's a very short stretch of Preston Road, which is used by the number 5, and it's certainly not going to get up to 30 mile per hour in that section. So I wonder, and it certainly wasn't on the bus company's list of roads they wish to be excluded. So, I'll leave for other people to decide where the demand for that has come from. So it's very disappointing to see it being unpicked in this way. But having said that, I do welcome the general support for it and hope that, with whatever bits are taken out, we can all agree to that overall this is the best thing for the city as a whole, and we can all move forward together to improve the road safety across the whole city and take us out of that shameful position of being right down near the bottom of road safety in this whole country. Thank you.
Some burning issues I want to at Manchester as well. I do agree it's been a bolting out of the blue for the Preston Drive at Stanford Avenue. The people in that area will not know that we're even debating this today. We have had nearly 2 weeks since the proposals were presented publicly in order to have that debate. So it's a shame that that's come very, very late in the day. And also, I would say that the area of Hollingbury, it's called Patcham, by Councillor Davey, it's part of Patcham Ward, but it's actually Hollingbury that we're talking about. It's an extensive area. And that certainly hasn't been raised by members previously when we've had our discussions. We had discussions a couple of weeks ago to try and find out what the concerns were, and then we might be able to, see how they might be addressed. This is a totally new request here, and it's also very emphatic, because basically, Geoffrey, and sorry that you're speaking to the colleague while I'm speaking, but it's quite emphatic because it seeks to remove this from phase 2, and without it coming back at any point within further phase 2 consultation, which I think is desperately important for the people in that area. Now, I know that you've been close to looking at the numbers, and I've been close to looking at the numbers for that area as well, and that's why, and I know you requested some information, and so did I, and members have been given this piece of information. But what this table that was circulated by Liz, and referred to earlier, in email here, I have it, basically, the officers looked at the Patcham and Hollingbury consultation area in sub-areas, and those were labelled Mackie Estate, north of Ladies Mile Road, Ladies Mile south to Carden Avenue, Carden Avenue south to Surrenden Peacock, Carden Avenue south to Surrenden Braybon East, and Road, and then we have a figure for Patcham Ward as a whole. Now, for those that are not necessarily, that familiar with the geography, I can understand you won't perhaps follow how that all breaks down. But what you can see from the numbers there, and what this is telling us, is we've obviously moved on with the proposals. People initially were responding in the consultation to the proposals as set out. And what we now have is a different set of proposals with refining, and in particular, the Mackie Estate area, which showed to be quite solidly completely against 20 mile an hour, is actually being now proposed to be 30. However, the other areas, if you look at those figures there, what they're telling you is that this shows that every one of those sub-areas, the majority of people will be getting, under these proposals, the speed limit they want in their road. That's the crucial thing here. The majority in all of those sub-areas will get the speed limit they want in their road. And that's not whether they're pro or against 20 or 30, because there's a mixture of 20s and 30s in that area. And I find it extremely disappointing that the proposal before us, the amendment before us, is to take out a huge chunk, basically Hollingbury, and say, right, well, you're out of the scheme. I thought when we saw the amendment, it was at least gave the lifeline that we might actually be prepared to consult them within the how long we've got left to run, because we're going to do the speed limit reduction order consultation next. But no, it's been made clear by Councillor Theobald, he doesn't want it in at all. And I'm very disappointed that the Labour group are saying that they will be prepared to vote with that position, because it's a disaster for a majority of people in that area to have that outcome. I think it's a great disappointment, and for the integrity of 20 mile an hour proposals as a whole, it also really it will affect the continuity, the clarity of the scheme in the phase 2 area. I don't think this has been thought through, and I would actually rather, win committee's support for a proper reconsideration rather than just removing that area in its entirety. As has been said for Portland Road, we're going to wait for some more. The member is to wait for more reports on accident data and monitoring and so on. And I think we deserve to offer these people in this area that opportunity to express themselves as well. It would be entirely possible for people there to clarify their position through petitions, through potentially more consultation as well before we get to the SROs. And we've offered more consultation in the case of the matter that came before us in the last committee about Preston Park Station North. We're now at the stage where we're advertising the TROs, and we're going to put some effort into that consultation. So I think that I was seriously asked, because the points that we've made about there are families living there, that area, their children are accessing local schools, they have to travel down those roads. One road in particular jumps out, and is Wilmington Way, which is a road that has lots of small roads off the side of it, and all the traffic goes down Wilmington Way. And if you look at the response from people in there, 60% of people want 20 mile an hour in that road, for understandable reasons. And they will be deeply disappointed if suddenly a large portion of the city is to go 20 mile an hour, but not there yet. And they won't understand that at all, because that's not what they've expressed. So, I don't know if we can ask you to perhaps reconsider the wording of your amendment now, because it was resorted at the beginning of the meeting, that we can perhaps add into it now further consultation with the people in that area. Because I would personally really like that to happen, to give them that opportunity. Council, I think that would be the best way forward for them and for members here, and I would hope for yourselves as board members as well. So, are you prepared to do that?
I'll have to say what I'm going to say, mate.
You're going to...
No, I'm going to say what I'm going to say, mate.
Okay. Right. Okay, thank you. Well, that's me done on that. Thank you. Chris, you wanted to contribute again?
Thanks. I just wanted to notice that Emma and others have yet to speak, so I just wanted, I can wait if you prefer, because really I was going to mention a couple of points that have been raised, so I'd rather, that's all right with you, Chair, let them speak first. Is that okay? Then I'll come back. Is that all right? Well, I can say now, if you like, whichever you prefer.
Speak now.
So I was just going to, I was rather startled by Councillor Robbins' reaction, because I wasn't... Sorry?
Be careful.
Yes, sorry, through the chair. I was just because I was referring not to Councillor Robbins, but to the sort of great upsurge, or whatever it is, or apparent upsurge that's being out there from an organisation of a certain inchoate nature, shall we say. I'd just like to come back to, I very much take, put Councillor Cox's point about Portland Road and the reaction to people, from people there. Again, it's also bearing in mind Councillor West's point about Ian's point that it's used by people coming from many other areas as well. I think that is very much a factor to take into consideration. Councillor Dunn has again referred to the result there, and as Councillor Cox as well put it, and paying due tribute to officers, that we aren't conducting a referendum with such consultations. It's otherwise what would happen? We'd have hanging coming back, or go down the slippery slope to yesterday's decision in the Indian Supreme Court. And again, I just like to make those points. And this idea that one's somehow anti-motor car and all this is I know people with sports cars who support the 20 miles an hour, so that's just cartoon language over there, but one's used to that, that this notion that one's somehow some agrarian, straw-chewing figure. I mean, quite frankly, if you came to my house as Emma has done, there's no straw-chewing going on there. Quiche, Councillor Janio, what can one say? Quite frankly, if he didn't exist, Bill Hay would have to invent him.
Thank you, Chris. Jeffrey, you're next on the list.
Thank you very much. Can I say first of all that I respect very much those who are passionate advocates of 20 miles an hour. I put that on Councillor Davey. I listened to his remarks. Yeah, well, and I respect his opinions and I respect your opinions. I think as an elected member what we want is a clear opinion from your residents. And I'm talking now about Area 5. That's what you ideally want, a clear opinion. I have given this an enormous amount of thought. I won't say it's kept me awake at night, but it's given me an enormous amount of thought. But the one thing is that hardly a single person has come to me. I get a very considerable number of emails and calls on this particular issue of 20 miles an hour. I regularly go to patch and lat, the Hollingbury lat. It's a subject which rarely comes up. Indeed, the last vote at patch and lat was 14 to 1 in favour of Carden Avenue being 30 miles an hour. And I was quite heartened that there was a large majority. I've spoken to people in Ladies Mile Road who live in Ladies Mile Road. They're actually, quite horrified that that road is going to be 20 miles an hour. But the majority went for 20 miles an hour, although the road at the top didn't. And I can see that is in a particular area. Now, when I looked at Area 5, and I went to see officers, and I have to say, Chairman, this thing that you've produced is really, yes, well, you put at the bottom, Patch and Ward as a whole. Patch and Ward as a whole is in Area 5 and in another area. What I asked for officers, because when I looked at this, and they came out with a clear view of the Ladies' Mile estate, I was surprised at that. I was actually, particularly the Mackey estate, I thought they would vote for 20. I'm going to be honest with you. But they haven't. Our officers, I don't think had any alternative but take that out and put that at 30. The Braybon estate, which is in a completely different area, they voted very much for 30. Fine. That's what they want. We're left with this particular area where no one has come to me, as the councillor, on this particular issue. And I asked the officers to tot up the actual figures of the people living in those roads. Now, unless the officers have changed their mind, I have an email in front of me which clearly says there is a majority of 4 against it going from 30 to 20. I have the email in front of me. Then I added Graham Avenue and Old Farm Road, and that made the difference too. So where you get all this lot of stuff in front, I really don't know. That is what I have in front of me. The fact is, in that area that I've mentioned, there is a majority against doing this. Now, I honestly didn't feel that there was a mandate to do this change at this time. Maybe if you had not rushed this, let phase 1 go in, let people get used to it, and then come out to these further areas, you might have got a different answer. And you may get a different answer if you did it in 2 or 3 years' time. What I do know, and I have spoken to officers, you refer to Wilmington Way, Pete. I wouldn't have a personal objection to Wilmington Way being excluded. But I will be told by officers you cannot make it a coherent area by taking one road out. If you want to take Wilmington Road Way out, because I am aware in the past, but certainly not in the last 2 or 3 years, residents have said, now I'm quite happy to take Wilmington Way out of this, but officers will say you have to have an area. And so what I've done is I've taken a coherent area where clearly the majority is against. Now what am I supposed to do as the elected member? I'm sorry, look, it does, it says it here. With regard to the area bordered by Carden Avenue, Ditchling Road, Braybon Avenue and Surrenden Road, there are 2153 properties. There were 579 responses. Over the identified area as a whole, support for 20 miles an hour on the streets you live on was 49.7% and against was 50.3%. I haven't written that. Officers have written that. Now, the difference, as they say, with a difference of only 4 responses, which is against, or their words showing as for or against an individual street level, there is no clear trend either way. I've already said to you, I have added Graham Avenue and Old Farm Road. Old Farm Road voted 4-4. Graham Avenue had a majority of 2 in favour. That reduced the 4 to 2. Now either that email, hope Mr. Parker won't saying it came from him, is wrong, but that's what it says here. And I've added the figures up as well. So, in fact, whether you like it or not, the figures in that area are a minority. I'm sorry, but that's, you know, this is...
Are we looking at the same table?
Look, I'm looking at a letter here. Can I hand this letter over?
It's not court.
No, well, you know, I can't do more than go to the head of transport planning and ask them to work the figures out for me, and they work the figures out for me.
Can I just...
What more can I do?
Can you say any
Well,
more?
I'm really... I'm sorry.
Thank you. But I think the difficulty we've got here is that you're looking at responses from people that, as to whether they wanted 20 in their road.
Yes.
You're not looking at the wishes of people with regards to what the proposals have turned out to be. Whether, because they may have not wanted 20, they may have wanted 30. And the table I'm looking at, which has come from officers, is basically saying that the majority of people living in the Carlton Avenue South to Surrenden Peacock area and the Carlton Avenue South to Surrenden and Braybon East to Ditchley Road area, the majority of those people will be getting the speed limit that they want in their streets. And I think there is a confusion as to the information that you're using, which relates to prior to the revision of the proposals. That's the difficulty, because the Braybon question plays into this as well, doesn't it?
I'm sorry, but you're the one who's caused the confusion. Because I left out... I'm sorry, it is, because I want this to be absolutely clear. I want to show what the chairman is wrong.
What's my point?
Because Peacock Lane, you put in yours, I haven't put Peacock Lane in. That's probably what the difference is.
Thank you. I wonder if officers have got any opinion on where, because I haven't seen the email that Jeffrey has, because that was written to him. I don't know what the content of that is. What I have got is the information I have requested has been shared by him. Have officers got any helpful clarification of what we're trying to discuss?
I can tell you what the difference is. The chairman has added Peacock Lane on this table. I have not put Peacock Lane in. That's what the difference is.
Yeah, we will need some time to clarify that point. I think there is some difference in opinion on how the information is being interpreted. Okay, well, I'm not sure what to advise here other than perhaps take a short minute to go through the email.
Alright, I don't think we can do this here, because this is the problem with having all this data and people coming up, unfortunately, with very late proposals, and now we're a bit confused as to what we're actually addressing. And I personally think the most appropriate thing, the most respectful thing for the people who live in that area is not to kick them into the wrong grasp with this amendment. I think I would really sincerely request Jeffrey, if you will change, well, because you've already said you're going to support it, I would ask that you change the wording to allow terms of change.
Get on with it.
I would really ask that. Anyway, any other members wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. My comments have mostly been superseded by those of Alan and the very reasonable comments made by Graham as well. I think it's important to take heat out some of this issue. Actually, the three groups in the room aren't majorly divided. We agree largely on the safety implications of 20 miles an hour, and we are debating the details based on the criteria of community support. And key is the independent and sustainable travelling, which is why we're looking at bus and taxi services as well. And it's those issues that we're debating and those details that we have gone around many circles with now. And I think that it's, you know, my personal belief is that every member of this committee cares deeply about road safety, and whatever their position and whatever details that they are particularly focusing in on, I wouldn't want to imply that anybody has nothing but the best interest of the public at heart.
Thank you, Anna. Any other members wish to speak?
When we vote on the amendments, are we then just going to straight to the substantive? We've had the debate for the whole thing, is that correct?
Yes, as set out before and discussed and agreed, we're going to have voting on the amendments, then voting on the amended substantive without any further debate. I think we've done the matter now, debating all the different amendments, and I think the substantive proposal as well in the last hour. Right, are there any other members got any brief?
Largely, from what Emma said there, I think we, some of the Conservatives over here, we've been, well, the focus is on us, but really the Green administration are really just following Conservative government guidelines. So there's no dispute that we all want safe roads for all users, pedestrians, cyclists, taxi drivers, motorcyclists, as we mentioned today, they're also trying to get the rate of use increased in the city. I mean, over this side, when we were in administration, we had a segregated cycleway, cycling was up 26%, we got recycling up, we're very, very, I think we showed that we have credentials on this, and we generally agree both the policy, as Emma said, we all agree on the same thing. We may disagree slightly on some of the roads or some of the areas that we've been discussing today, but really the message that this fiasco has sent to the city, really, especially your speech, Chair, which I found you shouldn't really give a speech as yours and keep asking us to. It's like the Euro votes. If you keep asking us, we're not going to change the amendment. The amendment has been proposed and seconded. You shouldn't badger people in this meeting to try and get them in. We're all generally supportive of this 20-mile-an-hour system. We should take the message away from this committee to the city that we want safer roads and we want the 20 mile an hour, but we need to do it with the will of the residents. I don't see that there's any problem with that at all. Certainly Councillor Theobald, as a ward councillor, is taking that forward for his residents. I do not see where the problem is. Could we now just please go to the vote on the amendments and get the substantive out of the way?
Right, I've come to go to the vote. Any other members wish to debating further? No? Okay. Well, I think we've probably said that. We have 4 amendments before us. We just need to be mindful of any changes. So the first amendment, is Holborn Road. That isn't changed. That is as the text you have before you. Okay. Yep. Right. So here's the vote. Right. All those members in favour of Conservative Amendment 1 on Holborn Road. Okay. Those against? Okay. There's no abstentions. Thank you. Conservative Amendment 2, which has been amended to stop after the sorry. Did you need to say? No, it doesn't. After the word deferred, the remainder of that has been removed. Yes. Okay, so we're clear on that. So I'll go to the vote. Members in favour of the Conservative Amendment 2. Those against? Okay, that's carried. Right. Labour Amendment 1. Yeah, hang on.
Yeah,
What's
that's
the
what I was
issue?
going to say. I think that
What's the issue?
I think yeah, of course. Yeah. Not happily.
If the Labour Group still wish to move and vote on this amendment, and I think it was just probably going to clarify whether it was still needed in view of the second amendment, but you still want to move it, so
Doesn't cover all.
no.
Is your concern that there was a boundary issue between the impact of the first, the sort of second Conservative amendment, and in Braybon Avenue, it basically mentioned both that
I think the issue was whether by carrying Conservative Amendment 2, that means that by default Braybon Avenue stays at 30 miles an hour. And so the Labour and Conservative Group Amendment says that the section of the Surrenden Road and Braybon Avenue linking Preston and Hollingbury remain at the current speed. So it's just clarifying that that's actually going further than it's saying that remains at the current speed.
because if the amendment stay at 30, yeah, whatever. Right, okay. So Labour Amendment 1, we go to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? No abstentions, that amendment is carried. Labour Amendment 2, which is Stanford Avenue and Preston Road, which is, there's no additional changes to that one. So I'll go to the vote on that one, Geoffrey. Ready to go to vote on Amendment 4 of the second Labour Amendment? All those in favour? I'm glad I'm not the only one. The first answer is the only one. That's 6 in favour. Those against? Abstentions, there are none. So that amendment's carried as well. So all 4 amendments with adjustments to them have been carried. So now we move to the amended substantive proposals. Okay? I'll call the vote on that. So those in favour of the amended substantive? Good, so that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, right, well that concludes that item. And we have the final item on the agenda is if any members determine that